normally I use drumsticks for it, so maybe I don't have blades.
All right, party people, welcome back. Here we are for Chapter 2 of Storytime with Mr. Ryan. We'll pick back up where we left off with Guardians. But before we get into Chapter 2 of this bad boy, naturally, a lot of the fans are wondering, like you're very stylish, well put together, where's your outfit come from? So we can start with the top here. You can see this is a Michigan Wolverine jersey, number 16, Denard Robinson, go blue. Pretty sure this was a gift from my mom, like a birthday present, like 5 years ago. I don't know, so shout out to mom for that. The pants, the dog pajamas, very fitting because you got, co-star here, Riley. Also don't know where I got these. Don't know how much they're worth, but very comfortable, very relaxed fit. Highly recommend as well. And then last but not least, we got the sockasins, right? Half sock, half moccasin. Very comfortable, right? Very versatile. Highly recommend Groupon, $5. What a steal. Riley, are you listening? Thank you. Okay. If you were with us last night, we read Chapter 1, and we'll give you a brief recap if you weren't, so you can pick right back up with everyone else. So in Chapter 1 of The Guardians, we met our main character and narrator, Cullen Post, who is a lawyer for the Guardians, which is a defense attorney group that represents clients who are on death row. Sit. All right? I'm trying to talk. Yes, thank you. Good shit, good shit. And so he's our main character and our narrator, and he had a client, Duke Russell, who was just literally minutes away from being executed. Riley, we've been over this. Yes. She's just a little needy right now, so bear with us. And so literally minutes, Duke Russell was eating his last meal, and he was then granted a stay of his execution, so he was spared to live another day. Now, for those of you that also watched the preview video, we know from the background that the client that he's currently representing is not the one that the story is centered around. So I think that was just a little bit of some background. Let us meet the main character, see what he's about, see how passionate and thirsty he is for justice. And so that's what we got so far. So we left off as he was leaving the prison after saving the day, and we are going to jump right back in to Chapter 2. Riley still needs to be bribed to love me, so just get used to that if you're not already. All right, you ready? I think she's ready. Since gas is slightly cheaper than cheap motels, I spend a lot of time driving lonely roads at dark hours. As always, I tell myself that I will sleep later, as if a long hibernation is waiting just around the corner. The truth is that I nap a lot but rarely sleep, and this is unlikely to change. I've saddled myself with the burdens of innocent people rotting away in prison while rapists and murderers roam free. Duke Russell was convicted in a backwater redneck town where half the jurors struggled to read and all were easily misled by two pompous and bogus experts put on the stand by Chad Fallwright. The first was a retired small-town dentist from Wyoming, and how he found his way to Verona, Alabama is another story. With grave authority, a nice suit, and an impressive vocabulary, he testified that 3 nicks on the arms of Emily Brune were inflicted by Duke's teeth. This clown makes a living testifying across the country, always for the prosecution, and always for nice fees, and in his twisted mind, a rape is not violent enough unless the rapist somehow manages to bite the victim hard enough to leave imprints. Such an unfounded and ridiculous theory should have been exposed on cross-examination. But Duke's lawyer was either drunk or napping. The second expert was from the state crime lab. His area of expertise was, and still is, hair analysis. 7 pubic hairs were found on Emily's body, and this guy convinced the jury that they came from Duke. But they did not. They probably came from Mark Carter, but we don't know that yet. The local yokels in charge of the investigation had only a passing interest in Carter as a suspect, though he was the last person seen with Emily the night she disappeared. Bite mark and hair analysis have been discredited in most advanced jurisdictions. Both belong to that pathetic and ever-shifting field of knowledge derisively known among defense and innocence lawyers as junk science. God only knows how many innocent people are serving long sentences because of unqualified experts and their unfounded theories of guilt. Any defense lawyer worth his salt would have had a fine time with those two experts on cross-examination, but Duke's lawyer was not worth the $3,000 the state paid him. Indeed, he was worth nothing. He had little criminal experience, reeked of alcohol during the trial, was woefully unprepared, believed his client was guilty, got 3 DUIs the year after the trial, got disbarred, and eventually died of cirrhosis. And I'm supposed to pick up the pieces and find justice. But no one drafted me into this case. As always, I'm a volunteer. I'm on the interstate headed toward Montgomery, 2.5 hours away, and I have time to plot and scheme. If I stopped at a motel, I wouldn't be able to sleep anyway. I'm too pumped over the last-minute miracle that I just pulled out of thin air. I sent a text to the law clerk in Atlanta and say thanks. I sent a text to my boss, who, hopefully, is asleep by now. Her name is Vicki Gorley, and she works in our little foundation's office in the old... Seriously? It's like 5 minutes. What's the matter with you? I saved you from homelessness, and you can't listen to me read a chapter? That's unbelievable. Anyways, sorry, she's just rude. As I was saying, she founded Guardian Ministries 12 years ago with her own money. Vicki is a devout Christian who considers her work to be derived straight from the Gospels. Jesus said to remember the prisoners. She doesn't spend much time hanging around jails, but she works 15 hours a day trying to free the innocent. Years ago, she was on a jury that convicted a young man of murder and sentenced him to die. 2 years later, the bad conviction was exposed. The prosecutor had concealed exculpatory evidence and solicited perjured testimony from a jailhouse snitch. The police had planted evidence and lied to the jury. When the real killer was identified by DNA, Vicki sold her flooring business to her nephews, took the money, and started Guardian Ministries. I was her first employee. Now we have one more. We also have a freelancer named Francois Tatum. He's a 45-year-old black guy who realized as a teenager that life in rural Georgia might be easier if he called himself Frankie and not Francois. Seems his mother had some Haitian blood and gave her kids French names, none of which were common in her remote corner of the English-speaking world. Frankie was my first exoneree. He was serving life in Georgia for someone else's murder when I met him. At the time, I was working as an Episcopal priest at a small church in Savannah. We ran a prison ministry, and that's how I met Frankie. He was obsessed with his innocence and talked of nothing else. He was bright and extremely well-read, and had taught himself the law inside and out. After 2 visits, he had me convinced. During the first phase of my legal career, I defended people who could not afford a lawyer. I had hundreds of clients, and before long I reached the point where I assumed they were all guilty. I had never stopped for a moment to consider the plight of the wrongfully convicted. Frankie changed all that. I plunged into an investigation of his case, and soon realized I might be able to prove his innocence. Then I met Vicki, and she offered me a job that paid even less than my pastoral work. Still does. So Francois Tatum became the first client signed up by Guardian Ministries. After 14 years in prison, he had been completely abandoned by his family. All his friends were gone. The aforementioned mother had dumped him and his siblings at the doorstep of an aunt and was never seen again. He's never known his father. When I met him in prison, I was his first visitor in 12 years. All of this neglect sounds terrible, but there was a silver lining. Once freed and fully exonerated, Frankie got a lot of money from the state of Georgia and the locals who had put him away. And with no family or friends to hound him for cash, he managed to ease into freedom like a ghost with no trail. He keeps a small apartment in Atlanta, a post office box in Chattanooga, and spends most of his time on the road, savoring the open spaces. His money is buried in various banks throughout the South so no one can find it. He avoids relationships because he has been scarred by all of them. That, and he's always fearful that someone will try to get into his pockets. Frankie trusts me and no one else. When his lawsuits were settled, he offered me a generous fee. I said no. He'd earned every dime of that money surviving prison. When I signed on with Guardian, I took a vow of poverty. My clients can survive on $2 a day for food. The least I can do is cut every corner. East of Montgomery, I pull into a truck stop near Tuskegee. It's still dark, not yet 6 a.m., and the sprawling gravel lot is packed with big rigs purring away while their drivers either nap or get breakfast. The cafe is busy, and the thick aroma of bacon and sausage hits me hard as I enter. I could go for some bacon right about now. Someone waves from the rear. Frankie had secured a booth. Since we are in rural Alabama, we greet each other with a proper handshake, as opposed to a man hug we might otherwise consider. Two men, one black and the other white, hugging in a crowded truck stop might attract a look or two. Not that we really care. Frankie has more money than all these guys combined, and he's still lean and quick from his prison days. He doesn't start fights. He simply has the air and confidence to discourage them. Congrats, he says. That was pretty close. Duke had just started his last meal when the call came. Had to eat in a hurry. But you seemed confident. I was faking, the old tough lawyer routine. Inside, my guts were boiling. Speaking of which, I'm sure you're starving. Yes, I am. I called Carter as I left the prison. Couldn't help myself. He frowns slightly and says, okay, I'm sure there was a reason. Not a good one. I was just too pissed not to. The guy was sitting there counting the minutes until Duke got the needle. Can you imagine what that's like? Being the real killer and silently cheering from the sideline as somebody else is executed? We gotta nail him, Frankie. We will. A waitress appears and I order eggs and coffee. Frankie wants pancakes and sausage. He knows as much about my cases as I do. He reads every file, memo, report, and trial transcript. Fun for Frankie is easing into a place like Verona, Alabama, where no one has ever seen him, and digging for information. He's fearless, but he never takes chances because he is not going to get caught. His new life is too good, his freedom especially valuable because he suffered so long without it. We have to get Carter's DNA, I say. One way or the other. I know. I'm working on it. You need some rest, boss. Don't I always? And as we well know, being the lawyer, I can't obtain his DNA by illegal means. But I can, right? He smiles and sips his coffee. The waitress delivers mine and fills the cup. Maybe. Let's discuss it later. For the next few weeks, he'll be spooked because of my call. Good for him. He'll make a mistake at some point, and we'll be there. Where are you headed now? Savannah. I'll be there for a couple of days, then head to Florida. Florida? Seabrook? Yes, Seabrook. I've decided to take the case. Frankie's face never reveals much. His eyes seldom blink. His voice is steady and flat, as if he's measuring every word. Survival in prison required a poker face. Long stretches of solitude were common. Are you sure? He asks. It's obvious he has doubts about Seabrook. The guy is innocent, Frankie, and he has no lawyer. The platters arrive, and we busy ourselves with butter, syrup, and hot sauce. The Seabrook case has been in our office for almost 3 years as we, the staff, have debated whether or not to get involved. That's not unusual in our business. Not surprisingly, Guardian is inundated with mail from inmates in 50 states, all claiming to be innocent. The vast majority are not, so we screen and pick and choose with care, and take only those with the strongest claims of innocence. And we still make mistakes. Frankie says, that could be a pretty dangerous situation down there. I know. We've kicked this around for a long time. Meanwhile, he's counting his days, serving someone else's time. He chews on his pancakes and nods slightly, still unconvinced. I ask, when have we ever run from a good fight, Frankie? Maybe this is the time to take a pass. You decline cases every day, right? Maybe this is more dangerous than all the others. God knows you have enough potential clients out there. You getting soft? No? I just don't want to see you hurt. No one ever sees me, Cullen. I live and work in the shadows. But your name is on the pleadings. You start digging around in an awful place like Seabrook, and you could upset some nasty characters. I smile and say, all the more reason to do it. The sun is up when we leave the cafe. In the parking lot, we do a proper man hug and say farewell. I have no idea which direction he is headed, and that's the beautiful thing about Frankie. He wakes up free every morning, thanks God for his good fortune, gets in his late model pickup truck with a club cab, and follows the sun. His freedom invigorates me and keeps me going. If not for Guardian Ministries, he would still be rotting away. And that is the end of chapter 2. Now, so finally here, it seems like we're getting set up for like the main case that the preview was about. This gentleman in Seabrook, Florida, named Quincy Miller. So it sounds like that's who we're going to be introduced to tomorrow night. Riley, so you can sit 3 feet away from the camera, but not in the chair that I put here for you. Sorry, sometimes she doesn't have a soul, so we'll have to apologize on her behalf. But anyways, remember, if you are doing it for the extra credit, upload your summary and share it with me. What I would say is more important right now is make sure that you are staying on top of all of the regular work that you have been assigned by your teachers. And as always, reach out to us if you have any questions. If you're tired of listening to my voice and want something entertaining to watch on TV, my one recommendation for now is The Outsider on HBO. Highly recommend, 10-episode miniseries. You're going to love it. If you don't have HBO, you're all young, you know how to finagle your way through the internet. You can find some website where you can download it. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, but we just did. So go find it and watch it and enjoy it. It's great. Hope you enjoyed. Looks like tomorrow we're going to finally get into the heart of the story. And as always, be safe and wash your hands. All right.